Right now, 20 to 30 degrees below average across the entire East Coast, a widespread freeze all the way down into Florida, and sub-zero temps from the upper Midwest to New England. By this weekend, some areas are looking at 35 degrees below normal, and a second Arctic blast is already loading up right behind this one. But the real story isn't even this week. Something is happening right now in the stratosphere that could blow the polar vortex wide open by mid-February. So today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what's going on, because the United States is about to get split in half by one of the sharpest weather divides we've seen all winter. And we've got a lot to cover. So let's get right into it, starting with our jet stream, because that's what's driving this whole thing. These are the upper-level winds that basically steer every weather pattern across the country. And right now, we've still got a large dip sitting over the entire eastern half of the U.S. That dip is keeping all of that Arctic air locked in place from the southern plains and the southeast all the way up through New England, and it's not going anywhere yet. On the other side of the country, a ridge is building over the west coast, and that ridge is about to pull some seriously warm air into the western and central United States. So what you end up with is this Los Angeles looking at highs near 70 Houston in the mid-60s, while New York can barely crack 30 and Chicago is sitting in the low 20s. That's a 40-degree difference coast to coast, and I want you to hold on to that number because that gap is about to get even wider. Now let me take you through this day by day, because this pattern is evolving fast, and I want you to know exactly when the biggest changes are hitting your area. Starting with today, this is actually one of the quietest weather days we've had in a while. Just some light snow up in Minnesota and the Dakotas. A little rain in the Pacific Northwest. But don't let the quiet fool you, because this is the calm before things start ramping up by tomorrow. The pattern shifts and a new system starts to take shape. Tuesday, a new low-pressure system develops underneath a very strong high, and that's going to squeeze out some light to moderate snowfall from eastern Illinois all the way back to Maryland and Delaware. Nothing major, maybe a coating to a couple of inches, but enough to slick up the roads. So if you're in that corridor from Indy to Baltimore, just give yourself some extra time. And here's a fun one. There could be an isolated rumble of thunder in the Mississippi Valley. Tuesday afternoon. Yeah. Thunder snow in February, which honestly never gets old. Some showers and maybe a rumble of thunder are also possible further south down the Mississippi Valley. So it's not just a snow story, it's a little bit of everything. Tuesday. By late Tuesday into Wednesday, snow pushes into West Virginia and even parts of North Carolina. And I know a lot of you down there have already seen more snow this winter than you've seen in years. This round won't be anything crazy, maybe up to an inch additional in the Carolinas. But with all that cold air still hanging around, whatever falls is going to stick. Now, while all of this is happening in the east, I gotta point out what's going on out west, because it might as well be a completely different season over there. That ridge keeps building Tuesday and Wednesday, and temperatures from California through Nevada and into Colorado are climbing 15 to 25 degrees above normal. That is spring weather in the middle of winter. Seattle is running a little cooler than the rest of the West, maybe 40s to low 50s with clouds and rain. But compared to what the East is dealing with, that sounds like a vacation. Denver right now is sitting near the freezing mark, maybe low 30s to 40s tomorrow, with a chance of light snow. But here's the crazy part by Friday. Denver could jump all the way up to 65 degrees. That is a 30-degree swing in just a few days. It's like somebody flipped a switch from January to April overnight. Now here's where the plot thickens, because Wednesday is when a strong cold front sweeps through from New Mexico and Texas all the way up to Maine. This front is going to be weaker in Texas, maybe just a few degrees of cooling. But once it pushes into Dixie Alley and the Northeast, it's going to pack a real punch. Pittsburgh could plunge to 35 degrees below average by Wednesday. I want you to sit with that number for a second, 35 below average. That's not a typo. That is extreme cold. If you're anywhere from Detroit to Cleveland to Buffalo, Wednesday and Thursday are going to be some of the coldest days you've felt in over a year. Even the temperatures that are happening right now are pretty wild. I stepped outside this morning and it genuinely felt like somebody left the freezer door open on the entire East Coast. Florida is dealing with a widespread freeze this morning, most of the state only making it into the 50s this afternoon, And if you want warm weather today, Florida is actually not the move. Believe it or not, Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas are the warm spots today, with highs in the low to mid-60s, while the whole Sunshine State sits in the 50s. Miami is bouncing back a little bit, looking at mid-70s to 80 by tomorrow, which finally feels like Florida again after a couple weeks of genuinely weird cold. But I wouldn't get too comfortable down there just yet, because what I'm about to show you later in this forecast means Florida might not be out of the woods. Houston and the Texas Gulf Coast are sitting nice right now, mid-60s to low 70s. Mostly sunny, honestly. If you're in Texas right now, you're living a different winter than everybody else. Meanwhile, the West Coast just keeps cruising LA in the low 70s. San Francisco mid-60s, and by Thursday and Friday. That warmth is going to feel even more dramatic next to the eastern freeze. You could literally fly from New York to Denver on Friday and go from sub-zero wind chills to needing sunglasses and a t-shirt. That is the kind of wild split we're dealing with this week. All right, now this is the part where I need everybody in the Northeast and the Great Lakes to really lock in, because Thursday and Friday is when this whole pattern cranks up a full notch. An Alberta Clipper is going to form just north of the Great Lakes on Thursday. That's a fast-moving low-pressure system that drops down from Canada and brings a quick burst of snow and bitter cold right behind it. It starts with snow in Minnesota and the upper peninsula of Michigan Thursday. And then by Friday, this thing dives down into lower Michigan and races straight for the Northeast. This is looking like it could be at least a minor winter storm for the Northeast by Friday, with moderate to heavy snowfall possible, especially through the Appalachians, where the elevation really boosts those totals. And right on the heels of this system, and this is the part that honestly concerns me the most, that next Arctic blast comes screaming in. Temperatures are going to drop like a rock Friday evening. And by Saturday morning, we're looking at some of the coldest air of the entire winter parked right over the eastern United States. One thing that really worries me about this Friday into Saturday setup is that the isobars are going to be packed extremely tight, which means the wind is going to be howling on the backside of this low. Heavy snow plus strong winds equals blowing snow, near zero visibility, and if accumulations are heavy enough, we could genuinely be looking at blizzard conditions in some spots. And keep this in mind, there's already over a foot of snow on the ground across most of New England from the storms we've already had. So this new snow is piling on top of what's already there. If you're in Boston right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments how things are looking where you are, because I know some of you are buried. Now, the GFS model is showing something that caught my attention. For Saturday into Sunday, it's developing a nor'easter, basically another bomb cyclone, trying to spin up right off the coast. I want to be clear, this is still several days out, so there's real uncertainty here. But if this thing actually develops, it could cause some serious problems along the entire East Coast. We're talking heavy snow, coastal flooding, damaging winds, the full package, and that's all on top of an Arctic blast already running 20 to 35 degrees below average. So if you're east of the Mississippi this weekend, this is one of those situations where you want to have a plan. Make sure you've got supplies. Check on your neighbors, and just be ready. Now, let's zoom out a little bit, because as rough as this week looks, what happens after this weekend might actually be the bigger story. Saturday is shaping up to be the most intense day of this Arctic blast, sub-zero temperatures widespread across Michigan and Minnesota, the Ohio Valley and Northeast deep in the freeze. Some areas on Saturday could be running 35 degrees below average, and at that level, this isn't just uncomfortable, it's genuinely dangerous if you're caught outside unprepared. Florida gets clipped by this cold air again too, probably not as brutal as what just happened, but it's going to be noticeably cold for Florida standards by next weekend. And here's the thing that makes this pattern different. The cold isn't just hitting once and leaving. It's recycling, refreshing, wave after wave instead of pulling back north like it normally would. Sunday and Monday, that cold air just lingers over the east. And by next week, another shot of Arctic air is already lining up behind it. This is a stubborn, persistent pattern. For folks in the southern plains and Gulf Coast, you do catch a break. Temps warm up nicely along the west coast and near the Gulf by the middle of next week. Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. Even Mississippi could see highs in the mid to upper 50s by Thursday and Friday. With parts of Texas pushing close to 70, at least somebody gets to enjoy it. But for the Great Plains and East Coast, the cold just keeps rolling in waves. And each wave seems to bring another round of snow chances with it. This pattern is relentless. And then, by the second week of February, that's when I think the storm track fires back up bigger systems. More moisture. The return of some serious winter storms across the plains in Ohio Valley. There's even the chance of some severe weather returning, where that warm western air crashes into the cold eastern air when temperature contrasts get this extreme. The atmosphere gets real volatile. Now, here's what I think is actually the most important part of this entire forecast. And honestly, it's the reason I wanted to make sure you watched all the way to this point. A sudden stratospheric warming event is currently underway high above the Arctic, and if you've never heard of that before, stick with me, because this could change the entire second half of winter. Here's what's happening, temperatures way up in the stratosphere. We're talking 30 miles above the North Pole, are spiking dramatically over just a few days. Now normally, you wouldn't care about what's happening that far up in the atmosphere, but when these events are strong enough, they have the power to completely disrupt the polar vortex. Think of the polar vortex like a spinning top when it's strong and tight. All that extremely cold Arctic air stays bottled up near the pole where it belongs. But when a stratospheric warming event hits it, it's like bumping that spinning top. It wobbles, it stretches, and sometimes it splits. And all that cold air has to go somewhere. If this disruption works its way down through the atmosphere, which typically takes about 1 to 3 weeks, it could seriously weaken and slow the jet stream. And when the jet stream slows down, Arctic air doesn't just dip south for a couple days and bounce back. It pushes south and sits there, and it lingers. That opens the door to the kind of cold outbreaks we haven't seen yet. This winter, extended periods of extreme cold, dramatic temperature swings, and a way more active storm pattern. We're watching this incredibly closely right now, because if the polar vortex does break down the way some of the models are suggesting, mid-February could look very different than what we've been expecting. Where exactly the coldest air ends up, how intense it gets, how long it lasts, all of that is uncertain right now. But the signal is strong enough that we absolutely need to be talking about it. This could mean another major Arctic blast, even colder than what we're about to deal with this week. And it could bring back some truly significant winter storms. Now, I know a lot of you are in cities I haven't specifically called out, places like Atlanta, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Portland, and I see you. Drop your city in the comments below, because I genuinely want to know where you're watching from and what areas you want me to dig deeper on in the next video. Alright, here's the bottom line this week. Warm west, frozen east, a 40-degree split coast to coast, and the most intense cold arriving Friday into Saturday. Behind that, a pattern that just won't quit. With wave after wave of cold air and snow chances stacking up through the second and third week of February. And lurking behind all of it, a stratospheric warming event that has the potential to crack open the polar vortex and reshape the entire rest of winter. We're going to be tracking every bit of this over the next 7 to 10 days, and I'll have updates as soon as the new model runs come in. If this forecast helped you out, hit that like button. It sounds small, but it genuinely helps get this in front of more people who need to see it. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the way this pattern is setting up, you're going to want to be here for what comes next. We also run a 24/7 live weather stream with live cameras, radar, and all kinds of weather data around the clock. So go check that out if you haven't already. Stay safe this week. Stay ahead of this cold, and if those models are right about what mid-February has in store, this might be the forecast you'll wish you'd paid attention to.